Do you know that Korea is the land of the morning calm? The size of Korea is approximately 220,000 square kilometers, ranking it at only 85th in the world in terms of landmass. It's a small country in East Asia. And just 100 years ago, in 1910, Korea fell victim to Japanese annexation and colonial rule, which lasted for 35 years. At the end of the Second World War, Korea was able to attain freedom from Japan, but the peninsula was divided. And in 1950, war broke out between the North and South, devastating the entire peninsula. This war claimed the lives of over 5 million people, including civilians. 21 countries of the United Nations assisted South Korea in the fight. 16 out of 21 countries dispatched soldiers, and 5 countries provided medical aid. These UN forces suffered 137,000 casualties, with approximately 40,000 soldiers losing their lives. 45% of Korea's infrastructure was destroyed, and many nations believed that Korea wouldn't overcome being a least developed country, which had a per capita income of only $67. Now, 60 years have passed since the Korean War broke out. What is the status of Korea in a state of armistice? Let me introduce the miraculous changes of Korea, a tiny country that used to be one of the poorest and most hopeless in the world. Korea, which had depended on international aid for a long time, became the 24th member of the OECD Development Assistance Committee in November 2009. Korea was the first nation since the OECD was established in 1961 to change from an aid beneficiary to an aid donor. Per capita income grew by a staggering 300 times, from $67 to $20,759, and Korea jumped from ranking as the 150th in the world to having the 13th highest GDP. And Korea has successfully hosted the Seoul 1988 Summer Olympic Games, the 2002 FIFA World Cup, and the IAAF World Championships Daegu 2011. It will host the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympic Games. So, Korea will become only the 6th country to host 4 major world sporting events. All of these things represent the miraculous and rapid accomplishments of Korea in such a short time, which have defined this tiny country at the end of East Asia. How did Korea do it? The amazing growth of Korea is based on the exponential growth of trade. In 1971, trade amounted to, at most, $1 billion. However, by 2011, it reached $1 trillion. What caused this? The answer lies among the following driving forces. Korea's drastic economic growth is derived from the synergy of 3 driving forces: the continuous development of competitive items, the development of the materials and components industry, and highly qualified human resources based on a highly developed education system and investment in scientific infrastructure. Let's look at these driving forces more closely. The first driving force of Korean economic growth is the continuous development and evolution of competitive items throughout the decades. The main targets for exports during the 1960s were light industry goods, such as wigs and clothing. Later, exports began transitioning into heavy industries, such as shipbuilding, electronics, steel, and automobiles. Since the 1990s, the majority of exported items have been cutting-edge, high-technology products, such as semiconductors, cell phones, display panels, and so on. Entering the 2000s, the technological skills of Korean corporations are highly respected in the international market. Our shipbuilding industry occupies first place in the world. The market share of our cutting-edge construction industry is at third place, and our steel manufacturing industry is in fifth. 40% of the world's lithium-ion battery market is commanded by Korean corporations. Secondly, another driving force of Korean economic growth is the development of the materials and components industry. The Korean component industry has seen exports increased by a yearly average of 14%, reaching $256 billion. Meanwhile, the trade balance of the component industry by revenue has increased by a yearly average of 37%, amounting to $874 billion. Also, since 2009, Korea has maintained the sixth largest market share in the world. The increased exporting of high-value products generated an increase of profits for the component industry. Korea focused on high-value components for integrated circuit semiconductors, flat displays, parts of automobile, and synthetic resins. The Korean auto industry supplies 80% of car components used in its domestic market, and due to its efficient and skilled manufacturing capacity, cooperates with the world's top automobile companies. The competitiveness of the Korean component industry in the IT field has already reached high levels. Korean corporations now supply 13% of the parts used in the iPhone, which enjoys sensational popularity all around the world. Also, Samsung has cemented its position as the main competitor to the iPhone, in addition to being a supplier of iPhone components. Furthermore, the established high-tech skills of the Korean component industry is becoming prominent in the field of eco-friendly future technology and IT. It has become the world's largest provider of laminated ceramic condensers, LED TVs, LED panels, and other cutting-edge products. Thirdly, Korea's economic growth is driven by a highly developed education system and significant investment in scientific infrastructure. Korea's education system raises a highly skilled and highly qualified workforce. The entrance rate to university is maintained at a yearly average of 80%, which is the highest in the world. Newsweek, the weekly American news magazine, reported in a recent internet cover story that the Korean education system ranks as the second best in the world. Also, according to data released by the OECD for 2011, the graduation rates for Korea students are 98% from high schools and 63% from colleges and universities, which are the highest ratios among OECD members. Additionally, Korea has a world-class scientific infrastructure and a high world ranking in both R&D investment versus GDP and in the number of patent applications. For a small country, it has a lot of power. KIAT conducts various activities in pursuit of technology advancement, including researching national policies related to industrial technology innovation, providing technology transfer and commercialization support, and supporting regional industry. Especially, KIAT actively supports international technology cooperation between Korea and global companies. It builds networks of global technology cooperation, supports international R&D, and holds global partnership business meetings. KIAT will eagerly combine your strengths with the three driving forces of Korea's economic growth to support your business, to form win-win partnerships. Korea, a country with a rich and diverse history spanning 5,000 years. A country with a picturesque landscape and with widespread cultural influence. From a war-torn and devastated nation to a world leader in cutting-edge technology, Amazing Korea is continuing to grow, prosper, and flourish. Make Korea your business partner. Make Korea your technology partner. Make Korea part of your company's success. Thank you.